Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for printing those.
Yeah, you bet.
Good evening, everyone. It's 5 o'clock, and welcome to this regular meeting of the Temple City Council for Thursday, March 21st, 2019. Please rise as Pastor Warren Gray leads us in the invocation, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Ken Cates, CEO of Fort Hood Area Habitat for Humanity.
Let's pray. Gracious and loving Father, I thank you for the ways in which you have blessed us as individuals and as a community. Thank you for the freedoms that you have given us, and may we always use the freedoms that you have entrusted to us and see them as evidence of your great love for us. We thank you for the diversity of your creation, and may we always be mindful of the ways in which our differences make communities stronger and more vibrant. I thank you for your grace, and may we in turn be merciful and gracious to others. I pray tonight for our mayor, for our council members, for other city officials who are represented here at this gathering tonight. I pray that you grant them with continued wisdom as they seek to discern what is best and what is wise for our community. I pray that they may have confidence in their decisions, passion for their tasks, and harmony amongst themselves. And may their lives be blessed by their willingness to serve for the greater good. I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
You want me to pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both very much. Item number 2 on the agenda is a public appearance to receive comments from Barbara Cooper related to right-of-way acquisition for the Outer Loop Phase 6 projects, parcels 5, 6, and 7. And also, item B is to receive comments from Steve Ward related to right-of-way acquisition for Outer Loop Phase 6, parcels 15 and 16. I think, Mr. Ward, you're going to speak for both? Is that right? Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
I have notes here if you all want to follow along, or if you want to listen to me, it doesn't matter. My name is Steve Ward. The address is 4302 Charter Oak Drive, Temple, Texas. Good evening, and we thank the council for your attention. My request at this time that the time allocated to Barbara Cooper and Steve Ward run consecutively, as I will be here to speak on behalf of both Barbara Cooper at her request as the owner of parcels 5, 6, and 7, as well as myself as the owner of parcels 15 and 16 of the Outer Loop Project Phase 6, which are items 9606R and 9602R on today's agenda. The city needs to acquire these parcels for that proposed project. But although I speak for both parties today, please understand that the property interests and financial interests of Barbara Cooper and Steve Ward are totally and completely independent and separate from each other. The issue at hand today, then, is the value of the properties affected by the Outer Loop project. Every party involved in this process, including members of this council and several prominent real estate professionals, agree that the property the city needs to acquire is, in fact, unique. Unique by definition is being the only one, or being without like or equal, or having distinctive characteristics. And it is this unique status that makes determining a replacement value extremely difficult for all parties concerned. A suitable and equally unique replacement or relocation property is elusive, and after over a year of searching, has yet to be found. Nonetheless, the financial terms of the acquisitions that have been negotiated over the past 15-plus months have been conditionally accepted by all parties. Both Barbara Cooper and myself are as comfortable as can be expected under the circumstances with the compensation amounts being offered. Our only objective at this time, then, is to complete this process so that we may move beyond this perpetual state of uncertainty and these endless delays and allow us to move forward with determining the new direction for this final chapter of our lives. Neither of us is asking for more money at this time. The sticking point, therefore, seems to be the replacement driveway over the retention pond, which serves not only as access to the remainder of parcel 15 after the taking, but more importantly, provides the ingress-egress access easement to parcel 5 of the adjoining property. Once that existing driveway and access easement on parcels 15 and 16 is eliminated, the new owner, which will be the city, will be legally bound and responsible to provide a replacement driveway and access easement as per Bell County Deed of Records, Volume 771, page 323. The city has tentatively estimated that to construct a replacement driveway and access easement would cost as much as $568,000. In our opinion, an amazingly absurd and unrealistic amount. We have therefore made the city an offer that would allow them additional time to determine a more accurate and realistic cost analysis, as I will explain in a few moments. The city is also concerned that $71,400 has already been designated in the acquisition of parcel 5 by the owner as a cost to replace the driveway, which is true. We have therefore offered to deduct this designated amount, provided the city recalculates the value of the remainder after the taking of parcel 5. As part of the whole, it has one value. However, as a standalone, landlocked parcel, of which 90% is in a floodplain, it has very minimal value. What then is the lost value of that remainder after the city takes what they need? Now, we must all understand that the driving force in this early acquisition process has always been the Charter Oak Waterline project. We would not be here today if not for the city's need to move forward with that project. As the council may or may not be aware, there have been 2 different series of meetings resulting in agreements, first on December 13th, 2017, and again on May 15th of 2018, in which all parties agreed both times to allow the water project to proceed. However, when the MOAs were presented to the owner for signature, the terms were not what was agreed to in those meetings and were therefore not accepted. In addition, over the past 2 weeks, we have offered to accept the waterline easement as was presented by the city attorney on November 30th of 2018 if the city would agree to postpone the acquisition of the outer loop property for 3 or 4 years until such time as that property were actually needed. However, after all is considered, if eminent domain is enforced as a last resort, then parcel 7 is the only tract that is affected by the waterline project. There is no justifiable need or reason at this time to condemn all 3 parcels for a project that has uncertain timeline and is most likely 5 or more years in the future. In conclusion, we request the City Council accept the latest Hail Mary compromise offered to the City Attorney's Office on March 11th, as we feel it would be in all parties' interest to approve the acquisition of parcel 5, 6, and 7 at this time and postpone the acquisition of parcels 15 and 16 until such time as a more realistic cost estimate can be determined for the replacement driveway and access easement. I thank the council for your consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Council, any thoughts or questions? Ms. Landeros, do you have any comments?
I am happy to answer any questions that you all have, and we've, talked about this at length, and staff has met with Mr. Ward and Ms. Cooper many times, and very thankful for the time that they've spent meeting with us and trying to work through this process. And from our perspective, from City Attorney's Office perspective, we do question the legal obligation to provide access to the extent that it's being requested. And if that is, part of ultimately closing the deal, I think that going through the eminent domain process is the process that we need to go through to determine really what that just compensation is. And as we've talked about, that doesn't mean that negotiations end. we're still willing to continue working. And Mr. Ward is correct, the water line project is ready to go at this time, which does affect one of those properties. So what is on your agenda is to acquire, authorization to acquire Mr. Ward's properties, 15 and 16, for an acquisition amount of $300,000, in addition to some relocation benefits that were, that one of his tenants was entitled to or is entitled to. And the second item is on regular agenda, and that's asking you to authorize the use of eminent domain on parcels 5, 6, and 7 for Ms. Cooper's property. And so, again, I'm happy to answer any questions. At this time, the staff recommendation is to move forward with the items as presented on the agenda, and appreciate all the time and that Ms. Cooper and Mr. Ward have given to us on this process, and we are very aware that, and feel, for their position, and understand that it is a difficult one, so.
I'm not sure why I never asked this question, so I apologize for putting everybody on the spot. But, so we go through the eminent domain process, which would then give the city the correct easements and right-of-way for the water line. And I know that Mr. Ward is correct that the outer loop portion is still, 3 to 5 years out. I think that's accurate. So what happens in the interim? So if the property, do go to eminent domain, an agreement is reached through the court, that does not necessarily, the wards, and Mr. Ward and Mr. Cooper aren't going to have to vacate the premises right away. I mean, kind of walk me through that.
They actually would. So you do a special commissioner's hearing. The city then pays into the registry of the court the amount that the commissioners deem to be the just compensation. We typically make that payment within a few days of the special commissioner's hearing. There's some filings that have to take place, but then the city is the owner of the property. And I want to, the Charter Oak Water Line is the project that is imminent and ready to go, but the property is needed for Outer Loop Phase 6. And while that is currently in some out years, we are already in the design phase. We're already surveying other properties that are needed for that project, and we'll be starting the right-of-way acquisition process on those properties as well in the coming months. So remember, construction may be years out. Design, right-of-way acquisition is before, usually typically a couple of years before that construction process. Now, the discussions with Mr. Ward and Ms. Cooper did begin even a little bit earlier than that, because we wanted to be forthcoming that we were going to come back and need more of their property than just that water line easement. But they would have to vacate the property. I'll answer actually your original question. They would have to vacate the property after that special commissioner's hearing.
In a reasonable amount of time.
Right.
The special commissioner's hearing and approval of eminent domain, if that's what happens, how much time between those two?
So if you all authorize the use of eminent domain tonight, it's taken us about, I'll say 6 to 8 months to get to special commissioner's hearing. We have to actually file the petition to start the process. And then scheduling that hearing is typically about 6 to 8 months out. Now, this is their home, part of this property is their homestead property. They have other protections under a Relocation Act that gives them certain timelines before they have to get out. So there's a period of time that they would still have to vacate the property, but it's several months,
And
so.
during that time, negotiations can still continue.
Can still continue, yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Ayla, we have also in the past done some lease back, or, there's an opportunity to.
I guess that's what I was thinking of.
Yes, yeah, and we have spoken with them as well about that possibility in our negotiations before tonight.
Does that lease back, assuming that was taken advantage of, have any impact on relocation?
Typically, it would not in this situation. No, they would still be entitled to their relocation benefits, yes, sir. You know,
At a point after the
well,
lease back.
so let me, with relocation benefits, you have the amount, some property owners are entitled to kind of a difference in their appraised amount of the property that we're taking and what it would cost to find a comparable replacement property. In the numbers that we have discussed so far on the acquisition, that would wipe out their relocation benefits for that, but they're still entitled to moving expenses. And Mr. Ward has some property there that requires some kind of specialized moving. So there's some expenses related to that. There's one other tenant on the property. She actually has already relocated, and those relocation expenses have been paid. So, we're.
Okay, good, very good. Council, any other questions for either Mr. Ward or Ms. Landeros?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward.
Appreciate it.
You bet. Moving on to item 3, this is a public comment section. Citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may sign up to do so prior to this meeting. Public comments will be received during this portion of the meeting. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. No discussion or final action will be taken. I have on my list here Mr. Bill DiGaetano has signed up to speak during this time. Come on up.
And you're not waiting until the hearing on that one other item?
It's not,
On that's not on the.
not scheduled for a hearing.
Right, it's not.
This time.
Okay.
So this
Yeah.
would be the appropriate
That was
time.
last meeting.
I got you, okay.
Yep.
My name is Bill DiGaetano, 2715 Forester Road, and thank you for your service and your time and indulging me in the March 7th meeting with reading 4 pages of notes. I appreciate that. And Mayor Davis, I think you were quoted, and I'll paraphrase from that last meeting, that the democratic process was served, and I agree, it was. We've been back and forth on this parcel of land down on Highway 93 for a year and a half at least now. And the developer met the city's requirements. And what I think I would challenge all of us to think about, and I'm glad I'm in the new planning process with this, is what are the standards, and are they stringent enough? Because I don't believe on 86 acres next to Friars Creek that we should be building 78 homes with 78 septic systems on that creek. I don't think we should be putting septic systems next to and adjacent to homes that already are attached to the sewer plant that's 2.5, 3 miles down the road. And I understand the cost, but I do think we have to think about standards as we go forward. And again, and then that veiled threat that came up, and I understand it, that manufactured homes could have been put on there at any time. But again, is that the standards we want as a city going forward? I think it's very important. From the standpoint of that democratic process, have the citizens been served upstream and downstream of Friars Creek? I would say no, because what's happened in the past 20 years, and I'm relying on a lot of neighbors since we've only been there 2.5 years now, and the damage that's been occurring from that extra flooding and erosion, we haven't taken care of that. And all the building that's created upstream and now there, on the creek as well, it's just going to continue, and we will continue to have 3 inches of rain giving us 15 and 20 feet of water coming out of that creek. So it's just, and I would still contend quickly that the geographic location of this development, being that close in the merger lanes and that close to the corner store down there, geographically, I don't believe it's the right location. He's met the requirements, I understand that, but, as a city, we're building a funnel that is only increasing at the top. And we have density, and we have water runoff, population, and traffic. And if we think about Highway 93, which is going to be critical from Highway 95 to Interstate 35, we got to be thinking about that. And if we continue to approve parcels of land independently each time, every time someone comes to council, without thinking of a broader plan of, do we need access roads on 93? And I know it's a state highway, and I know TxDOT doesn't come to the party until somebody dies, too many accidents, whatever. But I think we really need to think about that in the future. That road is tenuous today, and it's only going to get worse when we think about the developments that have already been approved and those that are possibly coming with the expansion of TISD down in South Temple. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. DiGaetano. Item 4 is awards and recognitions. First item is to recognize park and maintenance staff for the Texas Recreation and Parks Society Maintenance Rodeo. Mr. Ram.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Each year, Texas Recreation and Park Society puts on a symposium with educational sessions for staff, and along with that is a maintenance rodeo where the maintenance staff get to go and compete with other peers from around the state per region at that time. And this year, the original maintenance rodeo in our region took place on November 8th in New Braunfels, Texas. These are the different types of competitions that are held throughout the day there. Everything from plant identification to backhoe operation and irrigation assembly, along with others. Some of the stiffer competition we have out there comes from these cities which reside in our region, Austin and San Marcos, Georgetown, and others. This year, Chris Wall, who's one of our maintenance workers, placed 5th in the zero-turn radius mowing obstacle course competition there in New Braunfels. And a team event, which is an irrigation assembly, David Cobb and Kenneth Chapman placed 1st. If you placed 1st through 5th, you're qualified to go on to the state competition this year, which was in El Paso. Again, the Texas Recreation and Park Society is broken out into 5 different regions. So by the time you get there, there's about 125 teams or individuals that have competed in each one of those different competitions to qualify to get to state. And as they got to state, we're very proud to say that Chris Wall again placed 5th the entire state, and our assembly team of Kenneth Chapman and David Cobb placed 1st. And I'd love to have them come up to the front and be recognized for their efforts. Right now, I'd like to introduce Lee Bullock. He is our new Parks Superintendent. Lee, if you'd come up and take a picture with your wonderful staff. Chris has been with us for less than 2 years. I think Kenneth's been with us a little over 3, and David's been with us over 21 years, 21 and a half years, I believe. And the remarkable thing about their team is David is our only irrigation tech on staff, so he taught Kenneth everything they needed to do to be able to go down there and compete, and that's just, again, very remarkable. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
There you go, guys. Item number 5 is to recognize Jackson.
Wait. Do you have more?
It's still me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I'm just next. So
Oh, okay.
go ahead.
You can move on to item 5.
Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry.
When I'm told to stop, I just stop. Item 5, with your permission, Councilmember Walker, is to recognize Jackson Park for receiving the Texas Recreational and Park Society Lone Star Legacy Park distinction. Mr. Ram.
Yes, Mayor. Part of that same state conference, parks, their legacy, Lone Star Legacy Park program, it recognizes significant parks throughout our state. And the parks have to have some kind of local community or some prominence within your community and throughout the state. And it has to have an iconic, history with those that have visited, played, or, rested on its grounds, is their words there. It must be a minimum of 50 years old, must have some distinctive design to it. Historic events must have taken place there, and again, associated with events specific to the local community, and also be home to some natural features. Our staff, along with Vincent Mundy, who's the Jackson Park Neighborhood Association president, and Patty Benoit, who's the Bell County Local Historic Commission, or with the Local Historic Commission, came together to compile the application to send to the state. And I have a short video that we utilized when we submitted our application to the Texas Recreation and Park Society. There is Mike Hemker, our other assistant director, accepting the award at the TRAPS convention. And Mike, if you would bring the award. And Lee also has with us, this would be a placard that'll be placed out at the park. And it says Jackson Park Lone Star Legacy recipient 2019. You can see here some of the other cities that received this distinction: Austin, El Paso, Fort Worth, Weatherford, Houston, along with others. There were, I believe, 6 parks total that got that distinction. So something to be very proud of.
Yeah, that's a very competitive process.
It is.
From what I understand.
It is
So,
very competitive.
Yeah, that's
Thank you for
beautiful.
acknowledging that.
yeah.
We will be having, and appropriately so, an event at Jackson Park on March 30th. We're going to have 4 different Party in the Park events to celebrate our 75-year anniversary here as a Parks Department. The first one, again, like I said, will be at Jackson Park, March 30th from 1 to 4 p.m. We'll have live music, some free goodies giveaway to celebrate our Parks Department, our Parks system. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ram.
Questions?
To me, Jackson Park is sort of what you want your parks to be. The neighborhood rallies around that little park. They hold events in that park. There have been times when there's been graffiti. Somebody, graffitied through that waterway there, and the residents rallied around along with the Rotary Club and took care of that. And so it really is kind of the gold standard, I think, with parks and neighborhood involvement. So I don't know if is there anybody here part of that's attending tonight, part of the Jackson Park Association? No, I didn't recognize anybody, but it's really a neat park. So thank y'all, the Parks Department, for doing the paperwork to get that designation awarded.
Absolutely. Thank you
Thanks a
very
lot. Thank you. The next item is a presentation of the 25th anniversary of Habitat for Humanity Fort Hood chapter. Mr. Cates, the guy that led the pledge for us. I have a proclamation I would like to read, if you'd step on up. Proclamation reads, from the office of the mayor of the city of Temple. Whereas Fort Hood Area Habitat for Humanity was incorporated in March 1994 and strives to eliminate substandard housing by providing affordable shelter to those in need across Central Texas. Whereas the vision for Habitat for Humanity International is to create a world in which everyone has a safe, decent place to live. And whereas Fort Hood Area Habitat for Humanity, through partnerships with homeowners, volunteers, and sponsors, not only builds houses, but builds homes, relationships, and neighborhoods where families in our local communities are offered a better life, where children are safe, where property values increase and crime is reduced, and where dreams of home ownership become a reality. And whereas there are many such havens in Central Texas because of the vision of the Fort Hood Area Habitat for Humanity founders. Since 1994, the Fort Hood Area Habitat for Humanity has completed 116 houses in Bell, Coryell, and Lampasas counties, and have helped build 51 homes in Mexico, Guam, and Costa Rica through their tithing program with Habitat for Humanity International. And whereas the organization has remained true to its mission, seeking to put God's love into action, Habitat for Humanity brings people together to build homes, communities, and hope by building strength, stability, and self-reliance and shelter. Therefore, I, Timothy A. Davis, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, do hereby recognize the 25th anniversary of Habitat for Humanity Fort Hood chapter. And I urge all members of the community to join the Fort Hood Area Habitat for Humanity in this year's celebration of their 25th anniversary and to honor our community's contributions. In testimony whereof, I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, this 21st day of March 2019. Congratulations. Thank you very much. I don't know if you are prepared, but if you would like, why don't you tell everybody maybe a little bit about Habitat, and you've done this before, I've seen it. A little bit about Habitat and maybe the Lee Crossley Center.
Absolutely.
Just spend a few minutes on that.
Oh, he gave me a few minutes, y'all. No, thank you. I truly appreciate the distinction and the proclamation. Thank you very much, Mayor. We've been around 25 years as of March, long before my time. I've only been here 3 years. This tiny little affiliate started out with just a couple of renovations in Killeen, branched out over the years. About 10 years ago, we actually partnered with the Temple Belton chapter to combine our efforts in one affiliate. That was a time frame where Habitat International was actually combining several affiliates across the U.S. So in that time, up until recently, in fact, we actually completed 90 homes, but thanks to the Lee Crossley community that we started a year ago in March, we completed 26 more homes and a community center for that. More specific on the Lee Crossley community, we're dedicating that towards our homeless and disabled veterans. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, very simple living, but they have 24-hour access to a community center that has a pool table. I'm not jealous, our screen's bigger than yours. Community center. But these men and women who have served are now getting the distinction, the honor, which thanks to the City Council's approval, the street name is Honor Lane. So 26 veterans, and in some cases right now we have a couple of them that have their spouse with them, and veteran widows have the opportunity to live and own a home. And again, we don't give away homes. They pay a mortgage. However, that mortgage is drastically reduced thanks to these partnerships and our volunteer efforts. One example, most recently, besides Lee Crossley, we built a 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath home in Coppers Cove, appraised at $110,000. We're able to sell that home for $75,000 to that homeowner. That family's actual mortgage, including all escrow with their insurance and taxes, is actually less than $590 a month. Very few people can walk out with an 1,800 square foot home and pay that as their mortgage over a 22-year mortgage. So that's thanks to the down payment assistance and, again, the partners, sponsors, and everything. So that's it in a nutshell. We do a lot more than just build homes. We do repairs. We're actually partnering with the City of Temple on here recently. We've talked, and we're trying to partner for what's called Roof Angels. We've identified, thanks to the partnership with the city, we've identified more than 40 homes here in Temple that need roof repair. And before the other partners like weatherization or anybody else can come in and assist these low-income families with new windows, HVAC, et cetera, they can't do anything until there's a new roof. So through our partnerships, we'll be able to provide the new roof, and then those other nonprofits can go in and assist that family with other weatherization projects. In fact, if you don't mind, Mayor, I got a small presentation for y'all.
Okay,
All right.
that'd be great, thank you.
As part of our 25th year anniversary, Ms. Morales was able to be there. However, one of the great things, my 3 years, and in celebration of our 25 years, in the last 3 years, we've actually worked with 7 cities, completed projects across 7 cities. Again, Bell, Coryell, Lampasas is what we cover. However, none is topped like Temple. Everywhere we've gone to, we've brought money and funds and taxes and everything too, but the City of Temple and City Council, as well as the citizens, have come together and helped us. So one of the recognitions that we provided on our 25th is Temple, Texas, for your support, thank you, of the Lee Crossley Veterans Community. You're the government funding partner 2018. And 7 cities, we've actually presented Lee Crossley to 3 cities, and only 1 actually stepped up. And the City of Temple didn't just say, yes, we'll have it here. They said, what can we do to pitch in? And once we presented, then of course the city stepped in and helped fund the infrastructure. Your teams transformed Temple, keep Temple beautiful. Everything came together and made it happen, and you're still reducing those costs for us. So you still set a standard for the rest of the 3 counties to follow.
Thank you.
And just on a quick note, Lee Crossley has been actually replicated now officially. Orlando, Florida actually broke ground recently on a project identical to ours. However, the only change is it is dedicated to single female veterans with children. And that is actually 12 homes. Other than that distinction, it is an identical replication of what we're doing here.
Very good.
So, Mayor, thank you.
You know what, present that to Ms. Morales. I know she poured her heart and soul into that project, so.
Gee, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We enjoy working with you, and we expect a lot more from you, too. Thank you.
It's just the beginning.
It's just the beginning, yes. Fair warning.
Thank you.
Very good. The next item on the agenda is item 5, which is the consent agenda. All items listed under this section, the consent agenda, are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the City Council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member and will be considered separately. During our workshop today, it was determined that we needed to go ahead and remove item 7H from the consent agenda. We're just going to table that for this week. So, council, this is item 7A through 7V minus 7H. Would anybody like to remove anything else from the agenda, from this agenda?
I don't want to remove anything, but I'd like to say something about item L.
Okay.
We can vote on it, and then I can make my statement, or however you want to handle that.
Why don't you go ahead and make your statement? It might
Okay.
change the vote.
Item L is considering adopting a resolution authorizing a one-year renewal for the lease between the City of Temple, the City of Belton, and Miller Springs and the Secretary of the Army with Miller Springs Nature Center. We've been honoring parks tonight, so I think we'd be remiss not to say thanks to Parks Department and Kevin and all of his people that have done such a nice job out there all year. It's so nice to partner with Belton and do something like this, and this is an icon for this area, so it's a good thing.
Thank you, Councilmember Long. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion for items 7A through 7V minus 7H.
I move we accept your motion.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long?
Aye.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Davis?
Aye. Item 7H reads to consider adopting a resolution authorizing an airport hangar lease agreement with Ketchimek Bay Flying Service, Inc. for the lease of Hangar 26 at the Drawn Miller Central Texas Regional Airport. As discussed, we're going to table this item, so I'll accept a motion to table this item at this time.
I'll make a motion to table this.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long?
Aye.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Davis?
Aye. Next item on the agenda is item number 6, which is the ordinance and second readings. Item number 6, item listing number 8 is second and final reading and a public hearing to consider adopting the following ordinances amending A, the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 4, Alcoholic Beverages, to include a general update of the chapter, additional clarification of terms used in the chapter, a better alignment of the city's regulations with state law, and an addition of an enforcement provision. And 8B is the Temple Unified Development Code, Section 5.3.15, alcoholic beverage sales on on-site premise consumption, by clarifying subsection 5.3.15A2 with additional language and removing the reference to City Code Chapter 4 alcoholic beverages, subsection 5.3.15B2, to better conform with state law.
Mayor, for reading all of that. This, as we discussed in workshop, the first reading was a couple of meetings ago. This is on your regular agenda for the public hearing. We had to back up and do some notices. So we are prepared to give the presentation again if you need it, but it really is on here for second reading to comply with those notice requirements and do this public hearing, so.
Very good. Council, you need to see the presentation again? Everybody okay? All right, so at this time, I will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Anybody? There being no comments, then I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion on items 8A and 8B.
I'll make a motion to approve items 8A and B.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long?
Aye.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Davis?
Aye. Item 9 is the first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning with a site development plan from Commercial District to Planned Development Multifamily 2 District with conditions and requiring a site development plan on 9.055 plus or minus acres and .433 plus or minus acres out of and part of Block 1, Temple Commercial Park, Section 1, Bell County, Texas, as 2602 South 39th Street. Mr. Deckman.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. This is FY 19-6-ZC, the rezoning for the Glen. So to give you some background about the case and show you the location, it's located along Everton Drive and South 39th Street, just off of the Loop. Ronald McDonald House is to the west, J.C. Park to the north. So as stated, it's 9 acres and .433 acres, 2 tracts, highlighted in that yellow area. It's an existing apartment complex that has 200 units and 14 buildings. Amenities include a pool, a clubhouse, a fenced dog walk area, and laundry room. The Unified Development Code, Section 9.2.5, prohibits nonconforming structures from being rebuilt in the event of destruction. The rezoning request was triggered when the buyers were doing their due diligence and asked the question, is this zoned for the apartment? If something happens, what's our protection? And the answer is, you're a non-conforming structure. So the applicant requests to be rezoned since existing commercial zoning does not permit multifamily residential. The rezoning to PDMF2 will bring the property into compliance with the UDC. So this is a site plan, and we will refer to this later with the PD conditions, but this gives you an idea of the number and the arrangement of the buildings and the parking. So I'm going to show you some photos from around the complex. So this is, as you enter, looking to the north, showing the landscaping, trees that are already in place. A couple of the units do have ADA compliant facilities. From the north side of the complex, you have easy access into J.C. Park. This is a view from the trail in the park, showing the pool and the clubhouse on the complex. Again, here's another view looking from the park onto the north side of the complex, showing some of the detail of the building. This is the vacant parcel south of the complex. Note the desire path or the beaten path in the grass, showing that folks are walking from the complex to reach the sidewalk on Everton Drive. So the zoning. The surrounding zonings are O1, 2F, and GR, so the proposed MF2 zoning would be compatible with the uses on the neighboring properties. This is compliant. The utility map, there's already sewer and water in place. You see the water in the blue and the sewer in the green. So it is compliant with the utility plan. Thoroughfare and trails map. These are only local streets, and there's no connection to proposed city trails, so there's no arterials or collectors that we need to address. So this is compliant with the thoroughfare and the trails map. The future land use map designates this area as auto-urban multifamily. And a brief blurb of text from the description of what that means is it's a standalone district to accommodate multifamily development subject to minimum site area, open space ratio requirements, and subject to increased buffer yards and building design standards. This is partially compliant. When we looked at these standards, we discovered that there was an issue with the parking, and then we'll come to that. So this is a PDMF2. It's a PD rezoning. This gives you a description of what a PD is. Allows staff to evaluate the land use and requires a binding site plan. So this is what's currently in the code and what would currently be applicable to the apartments for the required parking. And I'll do the math for you on the next slide, so I won't make you do that while we're looking at it. So here's the site plan, and the first PD condition would be to grant an exception to the required parking ratios to be reduced to allow the exact number of spaces that are shown on the site plan. So the code that I just showed you would require 379 spaces. There are 363 spaces existing, so they're short 16. So this condition would allow the exact number that they have, no more, no less. The second PD condition. And remember I mentioned that there's evidence that folks are walking across that grassy area. So there's evidence that people are walking to and from this complex. we've asked the applicant to provide a 4-foot sidewalk in the public right-of-way of South 39th Street, and that's shown on this aerial photo by this highlighted yellow line. That is in the public right-of-way. The buyer has agreed to construct the sidewalk. Staff recommends the sidewalk to be constructed within 1 year. That was discussed at P&Z, but the timeline was not in discussion with the city manager. We determined that 1 year would be an appropriate time to allow them to complete that construction. So that is added to the conditions that were originally approved at P&Z. Final condition standard to a PD is requiring approval of the site plan as shown. So to give a summary of the compliance future land use plan, it's partial. We discussed why. It's compatible with surrounding uses and zoning, public facilities, and the thoroughfare plan. As required, it was publicly notified. Mailed notices were sent out. 6 notices all around the property were returned in agreement. We had 1 notice from the property owner of that grassy parcel that was returned in disagreement. He approached us and attended P&Z. We discussed before the meeting and during the meeting. His concern was that the rezoning of his neighbors would require him to be subject to additional buffering and screening. He'd have to build a wall or a fence. And that's not the case. We communicated that to him, sat down with him ahead of the P&Z, and at the meeting he said he has no further objection to the case. So P&Z at the March 4th, 2019 meeting voted 9-0 to approve the rezoning per staff's recommendation. Staff's recommendation is to approve the rezoning request for the Glen to plan development PDMF2 in accordance with the site development plan and the following conditions: granting exception to the required parking ratios to be reduced to allow the number of exact spaces shown, requiring that 4-foot sidewalk that we discussed, requiring approval of the site development plan, and number 4 is recommending that the sidewalk be constructed within 1 year of final approval by this council. With that, I'll stand by for your questions and comments.
Thank you, Mr. Deckman. Council, any questions? Nope. This item is also subject to a public hearing. At this time, I'll open that public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Greetings, Mayor, members of council. My name is Jamie Sechrist, 3600 Bird Creek Plaza, 76502. I'm your applicant for this request. I represent the potential buyers of the Glen Apartments on 39th Street in Temple. And we did notice that the zoning wasn't quite right on these apartments. Of course, we wanted to get those brought into compliance and have proper zoning before we purchase the property. That's the reason for our request. We have no problem building a 4-foot sidewalk from our entrance all the way down to Everton Drive, which actually goes on to not even our property. But we're happy to do that. We're happy to put in a sidewalk. I think the one in disagreement was just a little confused, and I think he ended up agreeing with our request. So if you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'd ask that you all approve this zoning request for us.
Thank you,
That's all
Mr.
I have.
Sechrist.
Thank you.
Any further comments? There being none, I'll now close this public hearing and entertain a motion on item number 9.
Make a motion to approve item 9.
Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long?
Aye.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Davis?
Aye. Item 10 is the first reading and a public hearing on FY-19-7-ZC to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning request from agricultural zoning district to planned development general retail zoning district on 54.592 plus or minus acres situated in the Baldwin-Robertson Survey, abstract number 17, Bell County, Texas, addressed as 8901 West Adams Avenue. Ms. Barrett.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. This evening, we have yet another plan development rezoning. This one is for a large site mixed use and retail development located along 2 of the busiest highways in the West Temple, at the intersection, the southeast corner of 317 and West Adams Avenue. Tonight's the first reading. And Josh Welch for WBW is the applicant for, and also he is representing the owner, Paul Kinnison. So on the screen before you is the map and location of the subject property. To the left shows its location at that intersection, as I mentioned. To the right is a close-up of the property. The entire property is 3 tracks, 1 large and 2 small, that are incorporated in the striped or barred area. As you can see, there is a subdivision to the south, and that's Sage Meadows, and also across South Cedar Street, or South Cedar Road, I'm sorry, that is also Sage Meadows. Sorry. Some background on the property. It is almost 55 acres, and the developer, as I mentioned, it is bounded by the subdivision, but the developer is proposing a mix of retail uses and would also request the option to perhaps add multifamily if the market dictates it, on up to 15 acres of the site. However, because there are some design constraints associated with this property, it has a drainage and flood area directly in the middle and a large sewer line. They're not quite sure what portion of the property they might wish to develop. Thus, the PD is for the entire area, with that as the delineating factor of no more than 15 acres in multifamily. They also were asking for a mix of various retail uses that would likely consist of a regular strip center, but perhaps a big box. And the planned development rezoning it has been proposed simply because of the size, visibility, and that mixed-use phasing of the tract, rather than a straight general retail zoning that would probably be appropriate for this location. So I have some photos. This is the view into the property from State Highway 317. As you can see, it's been used as agricultural land, and it is basically not developed. Another view of the property, also from 317, does show the 10-foot sidewalk that was placed there when the highway was reconfigured recently by TxDOT. Moving to the West Adams side along the entrance ramp, you can see that the view south into the property has a tree line. Can't really see the extent of the 55 acres, but it is basically cropland or ranch land on the other side of that tree line. And then again, the right-hand view shows the view west along that access road to the intersection with 317. And again, showing the tree line and the agricultural aspect of that property. The current zoning is ag, and it is bounded on the south and the east by Single Family 2, which was the subdivision that I mentioned earlier. There are scattered tracts of GR general retail near the property along 317 on that east side, and then across West Adams, as some of you may recall, is a PDGR tract that was done as a PD because of its visibility several years ago. The future land use map does have the intersection corner. A good portion of that tract has suburban commercial for the designation. However, the eastern portion of that property was designated as suburban residential. So therefore, with the future land use map, their proposal is only in partial compliance with the future land use map. However, the suburban commercial does support the suburban residential that is in the area. There is auto-urban residential called out also on the east side of the South Cedar Road, which is the Sage Meadows subdivision portion. Utility map is on the screen and shows that water and sewer are available to the property, so it is in compliance. On the thoroughfare and trails map, as you can see, Highway 317 and West Adams are both major arterials. There would be the requirement of a 6-foot sidewalk along the West Adams portion of the property at development. Additionally, one of the conditions that we're asking for is a 4-foot sidewalk along the South Cedar Road, which as you see is a local street, and one would not be required per code. It would connect to an existing sidewalk that was put in along that same side of the street previously, presumably with the Sage Meadows subdivision, so it would make that connection. And additionally, the dotted blue line that you see is the Trails Master Plan with a trail shown that would connect from West Adams portion along and down to the Sage Meadows, has a trail through it, through their drainage area, and the one of the conditions for the PD is to request a developer to put in that trail at development, and he has agreed. There were 66 notices mailed for this case. I received 6 back in agreement. 3 of those were from the property owner himself, and 1 in disagreement from a neighbor in the Sage Meadows subdivision. The newspaper did print the notice in February, which is in accordance with state law and local ordinance. So staff is recommending approval of this rezoning request to Plan Development General Retail from Ag with the following conditions and with the site development plan to follow as specified. So when or if the developer would propose to build either multifamily or a big box store, those site development plans for the building would have to come back to council as part of the PD. So here are the conditions. That the PDGR is for the entire property, that would allow the GR, general retail uses by right, with the following exceptions. That any GR development that would have a large building in excess of 50,000 square feet, better known as a big box, would require additional development site plan approval as a PD amendment in the future prior to development. And then that would also be for the elevations of the structure, landscaping, and the parking lot design. That multifamily development would be allowed on up to 15 acres, but with the requirement, again, that an additional development site plan approval as a PD amendment would come forward to your, for your approval prior to construction for the same structure, elevations, landscaping, and parking lot design. That any signage on site, the freestanding signage, the bases would contain a masonry and or decorative metal element, which our sign code does not. Currently, we don't have any of those sorts of requirements, except in some of the overlay areas. So that, because of the visibility of the site, staff felt that that was important for the overall design, and the applicant has agreed. That the improved trail that I mentioned would be built by the developer prior to or at development of the adjacent areas, and that would implement the Trails Master Plan. He's also agreed, and we've requested a screening and buffering of 20 feet in width to be required along those neighboring properties that have the residential uses. And then the final condition is the 4-foot sidewalk along South Cedar Road at development, which would connect to the existing sidewalk. And not mentioned specifically is the requirement that at development, the 6-foot sidewalk along West Adams, that's per our UDC code, but that is a condition that they've agreed to as well. This is a site plan that has been prepared, and as you can see, the red roughly delineates where the sidewalks would be constructed at development, and the green is the rough approximate location of that trail to come. And then the same conditions are on the right-hand side. So at the February 19th meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission voted to recommend approval of this rezoning to PDGR per staff's recommendation that she's just been presented with. And if you have any questions or comments, Mr. Welch is here, and perhaps I can answer them for you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Any questions, council? Very good. Comments from anybody? Okay. This item is subject to a public hearing, so I'll open that public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Josh Welch. I'm the applicant here with this request, and much like Lynn said, the reason for us doing the PD and this proposal looking like it does is until we get some with the drainage area and the floodplain that kind of splits the property into two different sections. That's an issue with it, and we're going to have some access issues we're going to have to work through with TxDOT with some limiting factors with some access to the property. And so until we work through some of that and start getting some end users to know kind of where the apartments potentially would or could go, where maybe some bigger box retail or where some retail is going to come in at, it's difficult for us to be able to pin down and know exactly up front at this time what is going to go where. So I wanted to thank staff for kind of working through this with us and coming up with something that works for hopefully the city and us and getting us moving forward. And so with that, be happy to answer any questions that y'all may have for me.
I think we're good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. Anyone else? There being no further comments, I will close this public hearing and entertain a motion on item number 10.
Make a motion for approval with the conditions.
I hear a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long.
Aye.
Councilmember Walker.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales.
Aye.
Mayor Davis.
Aye. Item 11 is the first reading and a public hearing for FY-19-8-ZC. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing rezoning from light industrial zoning district to single-family 1 zoning district on .189 plus or minus acres, being Lot 7, Block 5, the Rylander Edition, addressed as 14 North 12th. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Just to orient you to where the property is located, it is located north of East Central, south of East Adams, and is on the west side of North 12th Street. And again, this is a rezoning of approximately 8,200 square feet from light industrial to single-family 1. The property is an existing 100-year-old house, approximately 100-year-old, that's non-conforming within the light industrial, and the property owner wants to be able to expand that as a residential use. Within the light industrial residential district, or the light industrial district, residential uses are not permitted. Non-conforming uses or structures cannot be increased, expanded, or enlarged, and those non-conforming structures cannot be rebuilt if they're destroyed by fire. So currently, there are 2 building permits that have been issued by the city. Building permit for the accessory building or the rear building. So it's an exterior and interior remodel, and there are no provisions as a residence. The other building permit was for the front building, which is the actual single-family residence. That's a remodel, and does include conversion of the attic space to living space, subject to the approval of the rezoning. And that was that would be prohibited under the current light industrial zoning district. So with the zoning map, again, the property and the surrounding area to the east is light industrial. It's also bordered by commercial on the west. There are existing single-family residential uses that are non-conforming within this block. Majority of the uses on this west side of North 12th Street are single-family residences, and opportunities do exist with the new comp plan and East Temple revitalization efforts to consider preservation of this neighborhood. The rezoning to single-family one, coupled with the issued permits, would bring the property into compliance. There's also a 2F zoned lot which is occupied by residential use. So in terms of the future land use map, the property is designated under the Auto Urban Commercial District, which is appropriate for commercial or more intense retail uses that do about residential uses, and it does not conform to that. The designation alone does not support single-family uses, but the property is also adjacent to the Auto Urban Residential, which does support single-family residential uses. So the request overall is in partial compliance. So both water and sewer are available to the property, and so in terms of utilities, the request is compliant. So just some photographs and some images that I have of the property. Again, this is an aerial image looking at the existing structure. And a street level view. Picture on the left is looking at the front or the current residence, and the photograph on the right is looking from the rear of the property, and I've got an arrow indicating the accessory building. That's the second building on the property. So to the west is an industrial commercial use, the Goldman Electronic Motor Company. And to the north, image on the left, looking at the property at grade level. Again, the property is below grade. East Adams borders the property, and again, the property is below grade or below East Adams. And to the east are existing industrial uses. So the development standards, comparison between the non-residential within the light industrial and the single-family residential. And on the right, the table shows the comparison between the permitted and conditional uses within both light industrial and single-family. The main takeaway is going to be, as within single-family one, primarily allows single-family detached uses only, with a couple of child care uses that are also permitted. The current industrial or light industrial uses that would be allowed currently would be prohibited with the single-family one designation. So 16 notices were sent out to property owners within 200 feet as required. 4 notices, 2 of which representing 6 properties were returned in agreement. So a total of 8 properties were represented out of those 16 notices that were returned. So out of the criteria that staff uses to evaluate the request, only the future land use map was partially compliant. The others were in compliance. So staff recommends approval of the request from the rezoning from light industrial to single-family 1. And the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 9-0 at their February 19th meeting for approval per staff's recommendation. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available should you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
You're welcome.
Council, any questions? Okay. This item is also subject to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to, I'll open that public hearing now. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lonnie Gruner. I'm at 3910 Shallow Ford Road in Temple, Texas, 76502. I am the applicant and the property owner. I just wanted to be present in case there was any questions or concerns about the application.
Appreciate you taking the time on that property and lifting it up a little bit.
Yes, sir.
You got some work ahead of yourself.
Yeah, I sure do.
Yeah, good.
I'm just trying to do my part to help revitalize the east side.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. I think you're good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to see it when you're through. Okay.
This might be the first time we've ever had 3 public hearings and we had a speaker at each one, so that's nice. Very good. Anybody else? There being none, I'll now close this public hearing and entertain a motion on item number 11.
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long?
Aye.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales? Mayor Pro Tem Morales?
Aye. I'm sorry.
Mayor Davis?
Aye. Item 12 is the first reading and also a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance granting to Encore Electric Delivery Company, LLC, an electric power franchise to use the future and present streets, alleys, highways, public utility easements, public ways, and public property of the city of Temple. Ms. Linderos.
Council. So Encore, as we all know, is a regulated electric transmission and distribution service that operates in Texas. Currently, they have about 10 million customers. And Encore, for decades, has really been the only franchised electric utility in Temple. Recently, council authorized a electric utility franchise with Heart of Texas Electric Cooperative. But until that time, it really has been Encore, and Encore remains the primary electric service provider in the city. So some history that I thought was kind of interesting. Well, first off, of course, you all know that we do require franchise agreements for the use of our public right-of-way and easements. State law does preempt us from requiring franchise agreements for some types of utilities. For instance, we don't have franchise agreements with cable utilities, but we still do have franchise agreements for electric utilities. So Texas Power and Light Company began supplying electricity to Temple in 1931, and there's an older ordinance associated with that, or franchise associated with that. In 1984, Texas Power and Light merged with some other electric providers to become Texas Utilities Electric Company. And then in 85, there's an ordinance amending that original franchise agreement from 1931 with Texas Power and Light to reflect some changes in the law over those 50 years or so. That 1985 agreement included a term of 29 years, which would have expired in 2014. And so that 1985 agreement was amended a few times. It was amended in 1993 to increase the franchise fee, amended in 2002 to change how franchise fees were calculated. There had been some state legislation that required franchise fees to be calculated differently. And then in 2006 to provide for a different fee payment schedule and to extend the term to June 30th, 2019. So we went from 2014 to June 30th, 2019. And so we're in 2019, and Encore recently reached out to staff to begin the process for obtaining a new franchise agreement. And the proposed agreement incorporates the same terms that currently exist, the same franchise fee payment calculation, and really just focusing on the term. And the proposed franchise agreement would expire in the end of March of 2035. It does have a provision that allows for a 5-year extension to 2040 if neither of the parties cancel within 60 days of the expiration date. But essentially a 15-year term with the ability to automatically renew for another 5 years. Encore, as they do in their current ordinance, will have the right to construct, operate, and maintain their lines in the city's present right-of-way, but also in any future right-of-way, which includes alleys, also public utility easements. The city reserves the right to lay our own utility lines in those same public rights-of-way, but we allow Encore to use them as well. I think you all are aware of this. If we do have some type of road expansion project that requires relocation of Encore's lines, they do that in conjunction with our relocation project and cover the cost of that, unless the project is solely associated with some type of beautification. But if we're doing a new road or road expansion or other type of project and lines have to be moved, they are responsible for that. The franchise fee is calculated, it's a factor of 0.002652 multiplied by each kilowatt hour of electricity that's delivered within the city. It's calculated on a quarterly basis, and those payments are made in May, August, November, and February. We also receive a 4% franchise fee of gross revenues that Encore receives for some discretionary service charges. That fee is, I think last year was about $12,000. So just kind of a lower fee that we receive. The total franchise fee revenues that were projected for this fiscal year were about 3.4 million. I think those collected in last fiscal year were about 3.2 million. As I said, really, the terms of franchise are the same, calculation of the fee are the same, just extending for that new term. And I'm happy to answer questions. I know Tracy can answer questions on the fee as well.
Council? Okay, this item also is subject to a public hearing. At this time, I'll open that public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. 4 for 4.
Mayor, I'm only coming up just so you
I know.
go 4 for 4 today. So
I appreciate that.
I appreciate, my name's Casey Simpson, 308 South 7th. I am the Encore local representative for the area. Ms. Lenderos did an excellent job of giving the company history and all of that, but I just want to thank her for her hard work with our legal department in ironing this out, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Casey? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I speak out of, yes,
Name and
sir.
address for the record, please, sir.
Name and address?
Yes, sir.
Name, Gussie Daniels, address 9201 Oak Hills Drive, Temple, Texas.
Thank you.
And I omitted that out of nervousness, nothing
That's
more.
okay.
But I do have a question about this, and like I said, I don't know much about electricity. As a matter of fact, my wife is the one that turns the lights on in our place. But this rate seems to me a bit low. If my math is correct, it's increasing at the rate of about $100,000, going from 3.2 to 3.3, and from 3.3 is projected to 3.4, if I take that figure right. And so I just wondered why it shouldn't be increased even a little further. Certainly, it would seem to me the company could afford it, and I don't mean that as an attack.
Okay. That is a fee that that Encore pays to the city for the rights to use the city right-of-ways. So, of course, I'm sure, Casey, you could give us correct information, but, you know, something like that, an increase in fee would be passed right on to the end user, the person with an account with certain electricity providers, right?
Mayor, as well, Casey can verify, but that fee is regulated by state law. Well, there's some negotiations that can occur, but it's kind of complicated.
The fee, the amount that's paid quarterly is based on the kilowatt hour consumption, meaning for all of the meters that are within the city of Temple's corporate limits, they're coded a certain way. All of the kilowatt hours are accumulated and multiplied by that factor, 0.0262. Excuse me. That particular factor, when deregulation came about, you basically took, I'm not sure exactly what year prior to deregulation, but you took a test year prior to deregulation and you did the math based on what was paid divided by the kilowatt hours, and that's how you come up with that rate. And that rate, as you said, is regulated by the Utility Commission. They require a certain amount, which Encore is above that amount. But in order to answer the question of how that rate was determined, it went back to the test year prior to deregulation, and that's how it came up. Okay. But the actual number is totally based upon the number of kilowatt hours that are consumed within each quarter or annually. So it'll fluctuate. The hotter, colder it is, the more is consumed. If it's milder, the less is consumed. Therefore, the amount we pay will be will be less. But to answer the point, or to the point, it is directly based on the number of kilowatt hours that are consumed.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
Also, as the city grows in population, again, the actual rate factor remains constant, but the more kilowatts used, so the revenue could be increased. We could see an increase in revenue based on growth in, usage of electricity.
When we look at forecasting the revenues for the budget, we do look at the growth factor of customers plus the weather forecast and look at trends in the past. But the way the payment is made, the basis period, the privilege period, and the payment due date, a lot of times we're looking back when we're forecasting for the future year, we know the actual amounts that have been collected just because of the basis period, privilege period, and payment due date. There's a big lag in that.
Okay.
So it helps in our future budgeting of that too. If that's the 3.4 million, when you mentioned the 3.4 and the 3.2, again, it's looking back in the customer growth and the fluctuation in temperatures.
Very good. Now you're a weather forecaster. Anything else
Can
on this?
look back good.
Anything else on this item? All right, then at this time, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion on item 12.
Make a motion to approve item 12.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long?
Aye.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Davis?
Aye. Next item is under the title of resolutions. It's item number 13, and it's to consider adopting a resolution to take action on the Temple Professional Firefighter Association's petition requesting recognition of bargaining agent as required by Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 142. Ms. Myers.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We talked a little bit about this topic in our work session at the last council meeting, and this item, of course, is on your agenda tonight for some level of action. I do want to give just a little bit of background on the agenda item. As a reminder, Lacey's office received a petition from the Temple Professional Firefighters Association. She received that petition on February 27th. That date is important because state law does require that council to take action within 30 days of that date. So this meeting is an important meeting for that timeline. The petition was signed by 105 of our firefighters, and the petition requests that the city recognize the Temple Professional Firefighters Association as what's called the sole and exclusive bargaining agent for all firefighters that are employed by the city. We've talked a little bit about meet and confer over the last several work sessions, so you all are pretty familiar with this at this point. But meet and confer is a process that's governed by Chapter 142 of the Local Government Code. It allows a firefighters association to file a petition with the city and request that they are recognized as the bargaining agent. And then it allows the city to meet and confer with the firefighters association over things like wages and salaries, hours of work, and other terms and conditions of employment. Meet and confer deliberations must occur in meetings that are open to the public. The city and a firefighters association, importantly, are not required to reach agreement on any particular topic or any agreement at all. In fact, the state law, again, it says the city may meet and confer. So there's, even after recognition, there's no requirement that you do reach an agreement or have an agreement on any specific item. If an agreement is reached on any issue, it must be in writing, and it must be ratified by both the city council and a majority of the firefighters. You saw this earlier in the agenda tonight when you ratified the agreement with the Temple Police Association. So it becomes effective on both the approval of the firefighters and the city council. Importantly, a written meet and confer agreement preempts all contrary state, local, law, any type of civil service provisions in the state law or rules. So this allows local variation of civil service rules of state law relating to civil service that are agreed upon at the local level between the management team and the Firefighters Association. The process also, I think importantly, provides a formal venue for communication and collaboration between management and firefighters regarding issues that are important to both parties related to employment. So a little bit more about the petition specifically. Once a petition for recognition is filed, you all as the City Council must determine whether you will recognize the association and adopt the meet and confer process. As I mentioned, the petition was signed by 105 firefighters. We currently employ 119, and that calculation excludes the chief and the assistant chief who are excluded from the meet and confer process in terms of as part of the Firefighters Association. They're considered part of the management team. There is the definition there on the screen from state law regarding what constitutes a firefighter association, and the Temple Professional Firefighters Association meets that definition. So within 30 days of the petition, you have to take one of three actions. You have three options for consideration, and I'll go through these in a little bit of detail each. So you can either, by majority vote of the council, grant recognition. You can defer granting recognition and order a citywide election and take that decision to the voters. Or as a third option, you can order what is called a certification election, which asks firefighters to conduct an election among themselves to basically certify that Temple Firefighters Professional Association, or Temple Professional Firefighters Association rather, does indeed represent a majority of the firefighters. So in option one, this option again is an option where you as the City Council approve a resolution by majority vote that grants that recognition. If you choose this option, the way that you withdraw recognition, should you choose to do that, is also by a majority vote of City Council. You do have to give 90 days written notice to the Firefighters Association before doing that. Option two is when you decide to order an election. If you choose option two, the state requires that the election is held on the next regularly scheduled general election for municipal officers. And in our case, that would be in May of 2020. So it would delay, if you chose this option, it would delay the ability to decide on the recognition until over a year from now. There's specific ballot language that the state law requires that is shown there on the screen. If you choose this option and it is successful, if it's successful and it's approved by the voters, the way that you end meet and confer, if you ever choose to do that or desire to do that, is you would have to hold another election and ask voters to kind of rescind that authority. And you cannot do that before the second anniversary of the date of the election. So it's for, essentially a 2-year period, you're locked into that process. As I mentioned, the third option is a certification election. This option is typically used in cases in which there's a question as to whether the association that's filed the petition does indeed represent a majority of the firefighters. So in this option, you conduct a certification election. If the certification election brings forward that the association does represent a majority of officers, then you have to go back to choosing between option one and option two. So it's not an in-state option, it's just an intermediate step in the process. If you're unsure that the association does indeed have the support of the majority of the affected firefighters. As way of background, the council at the time did choose option three when the Temple Police Association initially filed their petition for recognition. The circumstances surrounding that were a little bit different, as we discussed at the work session last meeting, in that there are multiple associations that represent police officers. There is only a single active association that represents firefighters, and there's, as I mentioned, 105 out of 119 signatures. Is pretty strong support. So on tonight's agenda, you do need to take one of the following actions. You need to choose between one of those three options. I do recommend that you consider option one, which recognizes TFPA. I'll have to work on that acronym. By a majority vote of council. But of course, whatever action you choose is ultimately up to you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions?
To make a point, in actuality, it's 105 firefighter votes in favor out of a possible 117, since the chief and assistant, or whatever the correct term is, I'm sorry, are unable to vote.
The 119 is exclusive of
Oh,
them
that's
already.
excluded,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
That's of the eligible firefighters.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Seems like, to me, they've already spoken, so that's a.
Yes.
Did this a number of years ago with the Temple Police Association. It was not nearly as cut and dried as this. So this is a good situation where the majority of the firefighters have already, stated who they want the representative to be. The city is open to the meet and confer process. So I think ultimately this is a good situation. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay, then if there are no further comments, then I'll entertain a motion on item 13.
Motion to approve item 13, item 1 under item 13.
Oh, option one.
Option 1, thank you, that's what I'm trying to say.
I'll
Option,
second that.
thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to grant recognition to TFPA as requested in the petition and to determine by a majority vote that the city may meet and confer under Chapter 142. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Long?
Aye.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Davis?
Aye. Item 14 is to consider adopting a resolution pursuant to Chapter 2206, Government Code Section 2206.053, finding that two properties situated in the Nancy Chance Survey, Abstract Number 5, Bell County, Texas, are necessary for the Outer Loop Phase 6 project and authorizing the use of eminent domain to condemn the properties. Ms. Landeros and Ms. Demers.
Council. Tonight, present to you two properties that we're seeking eminent domain authority for Outer Loop Phase 6. The current design anticipates needing right-of-way from 17 properties owned by 13 private citizens or entities. The city has acquired one property via an arm's length market transaction when that owner decided to sell the property. And the two of the property owners are also owners that the city needed easements from for the Charter Oak water line. And staff was already working with these two owners for Charter Oak project when staff received the Outer Loop Phase 6 design showing that the city needed a right-of-way from each of them as well. The right-of-way acquisition also results in relocation of the owners and their tenants. So staff approached the owners about the right-of-way needed for Outer Loop Phase 6 once we found out that we would need that right-of-way. We did contract with Stateside Right-of-Way Services to help with the acquisition and relocation services on this project. Appraisals were conducted on the properties and offers were made to the two owners based on those appraisals. Relocation studies were also conducted and presented to the owners and their tenants. One tenant has already relocated, and at the time of prepared this presentation, we had reached an agreement with one property owner. This is an overview map of the project. Here's Old Waco Road, and the proposed Outer Loop 6 will go through kind of the Pepper Creek area, Charter Oak, and the railroad over to I-35 and have an at-grade intersection with it. And this is the property that the city has already purchased. It's about 9 acres. These properties right here, the two that hopefully we have an agreement on, and the properties here in this polygon area are the properties before you tonight that we're requesting eminent domain on. The property we call Parcel 5, this area in red is the area that we need is the right-of-way that we need. The area in yellow is the remaining property after the right-of-way acquisition. And that property is a total of 7.28 acres, and we need 3.825 acres. There is a small, fairly large storage shed in the part to be acquired, about 1,600 square feet. Our appraiser determined just compensation to be $106,228 for this right-of-way. The second property contains parcels 6 and 7, and they were given the two numbers because they had two tax IDs, but it's technically one property. And the area in red is the area that we need, and the area in yellow is the remaining property. This property is a total of 4.705 acres. We need 4.141 acres. And as you can see there, there's actually several improvements in the part to be acquired, including a single-family residence that is the homestead, and several other improvements, office building, greenhouse, an RV shelter, extra septic system, and some landscaping and paving. The appraiser determined just compensation to be $229,915. So the property combined, we need a total of 7.966 acres and a total just compensation of $336,143. We made an initial offer on August 30th, 2018. We've had multiple meetings and negotiations between the staff and the owner. And we felt despite good faith efforts by both parties, we have been unable to reach an agreement at this time. And despite negotiations, we do believe an agreement is unlikely at this time. Therefore, we're requesting authority to use eminent domain. If you grant that authority tonight, a final offer letter will be presented to the owners. And if that final offer is not accepted in the 14 days required by law, the city will proceed to condemnation. As we stated in work session, we can still continue negotiations to settle even after we file. This just lets that process proceed, but we can still continue to possibly settle this this transaction. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Council, any questions, further comments on this? There being no further comments, I'll entertain a motion on item number 14. And council, you do have the special motion language at your desk.
I'll make the motion. I move that the City of Temple approve resolution number 2019-9606-R and authorize the use of the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to two properties located along Charter Oak Drive in Temple, Texas, for the construction of Outer Loop Phase 6. The first property being more partially described, particularly described as 3.825 acres situated in the Nancy Chance Survey, Abstract Number 5, Bell County, Texas, embracing a portion of a called 7.28 acre tract conveyed to Barbara J. Cooper in document number 2007-00029-394, official public records of real property, Bell County, Texas, and the second property being more particularly described as 4.141 acres situated in the Nancy Chance Survey, Abstract Number 5, Bell County, Texas, embracing a portion of a called 4.705 acre tract conveyed to Barbara J. Cooper in volume 5574, page 453, official public records of real property, Bell County, Texas.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long.
Aye.
Councilmember Walker.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales.
Aye.
Mayor Davis.
Aye. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting, and this meeting is adjourned.